I just did a triple wave with my co-founder where we talked a lot about our plans for this year and what we find fulfilling and what we want to achieve. And one of those key messages we had was that we have a genuine conviction that if every brand in the world used this, would reduce global return volume by somewhere between 5 and 10%. And what an amazing impact that would be to reduce global return logistics, because it's awful for the environment and a whole bunch of other things.
You're listening to Inside Commerce, a weekly e-com strategy, technology and CX-focused podcast hosted by experienced digital consultants and re-platform specialists James Gurd and Paul Rogers. Get insights into e-com strategy of leading brands, hear from industry thought leaders and leading tech vendors with practical advice to help you improve your online CX. This episode is sponsored by Shopify and got a really interesting and highly topical conversation today. So we are talking about why the ability to edit orders for e-commerce teams is a competitive commercial necessity. And before I introduce our guest today, he'll be very well known probably to a lot of you because he's been very, very busy scaling a startup and landed that startup into lots of Shopify merchants. The concept of this is basically that so many e-commerce teams have issues where customers place an order, but then they need to change it. And depending on their integrations and their order management processes, those orders could be down in other systems very, very quickly. Making edits when it gets down into ERP, WMS becomes much more complex and challenging. I've seen plenty of businesses where they have to have a manual process with a customer service team, phoning up someone in the warehouse going, has it gone out yet? Can you pause it? We need to add an item, we need to remove it. Then you've got all the related flows around. If the change means you've got to do something with the funds, do you have to take more refund, etc.? You create all this effort for customer service teams, which can lead to frustration, but also can lead to orders having gone and the customer then having to retrospectively fix what they wanted to change. This is why we're chatting to Hamish McKay today, who's the co-founder of Order Editing. So before I steal his thunder, I'll let Hamish introduce himself. And also, for those of you who don't know in enough detail what Order Editing is. Hey, Hamish, lovely to see you, mate.
Good to see you. Yeah, I'm Hamish. I'm the founder of Order Editing, the non-technical founder, as I like to describe myself, which my developer founder loves. And yeah, I'm 23. We've been building this startup very publicly over LinkedIn, and that's led to just an amazing amount of growth last year when we took this thing full time, working with some of the biggest, most recognizable brands in the UK, and ultimately solving this nuclear customer experience and post-purchase problem that, for whatever reason, in the last 20 years of online retail, just had never been solved, and that there was no way for you to make a change to your order after you bought it without ringing up a human and getting manual labor over the line. And combine that with the complexity of selling on Shopify with ERPs or warehouse management softwares or in multiple currencies and different jurisdictions, it starts to make a little bit more sense why we are the first to do this.
And what I love is this doesn't just come from do you know what, I want to be an entrepreneur and launch an app for Shopify. You've had previous experience, haven't you, working in customer experience environment where you've had to handle customer service inquiries and you've seen the inefficiency of managing loads and loads of tickets around order edits.
Yeah, I mean, that's how this started. My first ever career was working at a big retailer based in the US, and we were doing merchandise for influencers, and I ended up managing a team of customer service agents there, and I asked the question that every customer service manager should ask of their agents: what do you spend the most time doing? And I had that in my weekly one-to-one sessions, and 9 out of 10 people told me that it was changing addresses, canceling orders, or changing product sizes. And hearing that as a very naive 21-year-old with a very simple Shopify store and a Ship Hero connection, I thought, you know, we've got loop returns for returns and customers don't have to contact us about that. Why are they contacting us to make changes to their order? And I looked around on the Shopify app store and there was nothing. And I didn't know how to write a line of code. So I tapped around my network and luckily got put in touch with a developer who's been in the ecosystem for 5 or 6 years and ended up building this. I was going to describe it as a beautiful MVP, but the MVP was far from beautiful. It was more like a university project. And that's almost what it was. It was like a university internship project. And God, has it evolved into what it is today.
Yeah, and I think this is beautiful because I'm a big advocate of MVP launches, and you get something out there and you make it good enough so that people can use it, but you polish it in the world as you see how people are using it. And I really love that approach. And for those listening who haven't come across Order Editing before, if you look at some of the brands that are using it, I mean, this is working at scale. You've got Represent, huge, fast growth fashion brand, Self-Portrait, Tom's. I mean, that's just to name a few. So this isn't just working for smaller brands. This is working for large established, like global fashion brands and other types of businesses as well. I mean, as a customer, I've experienced that there are always these weird edge cases in user journey flows, even on a polished platform like Shopify. Good examples like a PayPal Express, fast wallet things where you might not have updated your address and it automatically picks the address. You're a customer and you've got an attention span deficit. You're thinking, brilliant, that's a quick payment, sorted, done. And then you realize that you've got an old address linked to your PayPal and it's sending it to the house you lived in 2 years ago. You get all of these edge cases, as well as like the classic ones around wanting to change the product or remove or add, where you suddenly create this friction. So I'm loving it. So before I start rambling about why I love the idea of order editing to support customers, are you ready for the questions, mate? Should we get going?
Hell yeah.
So the first one is, you have been on a whirlwind international. Anyone following Hamish's journey on LinkedIn, I love it because you're saying you're building a 20 million startup in public and you're really transparent about the highs, the lows, where you've gone, what's happening. And you're doing that to build interest, but also to help you develop the proposition. So I'd love to know what has worked for you in the past 12 months and how has that influenced your go-to-market and your proposition?
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those questions that you need to answer in context of who I am as a person and like the situation we are in as startup founders. I entered this industry with no network, no connections. No one at any of these brands that we work with had any idea who I was as a human being. And as soon as we had the idea for this product, and this was while we just were dog fooding it and using it ourselves, like it wasn't a company yet, I started posting on LinkedIn because I was like, in 2 years, when we put this out of market, I need to have some form of credibility. Otherwise, it's just going to fall on dead ears. And it's just this great idea. Like people need to know about this. So I started telling the story of a young kid who was doing really well in uni and interning at a cool fashion startup and submitting projects on all these different types of things. It was interesting customer experience. Just like a kid figuring out the world, and built a little bit of a following, got used to putting myself out there online, which is a really hard thing to do as a New Zealander with lots of tall poppy syndrome. But it meant that when we started this company and I posted, like people listened and people felt like they knew me and the reach got out there. And I went from, young kid telling a story on the internet to being Hamish from order editing. And that was a really beautiful thing, which kind of describes what worked really well in the last 12 months is that my job as the non-technical founder is to amplify the amazing things that my business partner builds. Like that is rule number one of my job in this company, is just amplify the product because the product makes sense. Everyone we talk to knows this is an issue. It's a known problem and we were very lucky to be the ones to solve it. And so my job is just to get eyeballs on this thing and let people appreciate what Kara is building, who's the name of my business partner. And that meant that over the last 12 months, instead of just like shilling software and sell and talking about results and all of these different types of things, it meant that I could just continue telling my story. And that's what people really hooked on to. They're not just like, people don't read content and enjoy reading content when it's just trying to sell you something. And I'm most of the time, 90% of the time, I'm not trying to sell you something without marketing activities. I'm trying to let you know how I feel and what this experience is like and how hard it is and how fun it is and how rewarding it is and how much I'm learning because this is my first company. And those posts do really well. And no matter who sees them, sure, it's not about the product, but they think it's Hamish from order editing and it keeps us front of mind. And that audience that we've managed to build has been huge. I mean, we started the year managing, let's say, between 10 and $20 million of GMV in our client book. That was the start of 2024 when we quit our jobs and went full time. And maybe 10,000 people would read what I wrote in a month. We finished that year managing over $4 billion of GMV in merchant value. And over 100,000 people would read my things every month. Like it was just a monumental growth and they compounded and all of these things benefited one another. And, we just rolled with the punches. I just rolled with the punches. Like the LinkedIn content was a great arm of our go-to-market that worked really well. And I enjoy it. I find it energizing. And then a lot of that kind of virality of the story that we're telling lended itself to other things that worked really well. Like raising small amounts of capital from really key people in the industry. We had a big brand founder invest in our company. We had David Wiltshire, the founder of Patchworks, invest in our company and also work for us as well. We had Oliver Rhodes over at Nolo Apps invest in the company, people that are really respected in the industry. And suddenly this 23-year-old kid who had a cool product also had a little bit of credibility and some support in the ecosystem, which you need. You can't do these really hard things alone, whether for emotional support or also just for business development. It also lended to the world tour that James is alluding to. That was like the most exciting thing ever. It's a beautiful thing that happens when you work from your laptop and you have no girlfriend and you have no belongings and no house. And that, like, I just packed up a suitcase with all of my t-shirts and shorts and my running shoes, and I jumped on a plane to Los Angeles and did 30 days there, meeting brands, telling the story, posting the odd video. And I went to San Francisco, met some brands there, signed some new clients, visited a few warehouses, did some tours, and ultimately ended up staying overseas for more than 100 days and visited 12 different cities, stayed in 19 different Airbnbs, all while living off of like $200 a day total, like accommodation, flights, food, everything. It costs $200 a day on average. So I was not living good, but my God, it was exciting. And it showed our commitment to what we're doing. Like I'm calling in from New Zealand right now, small country down the bottom of the planet, where with very little e-com presence, there's maybe 100 Shopify Plus stores in my home country. And my business was not going to be that. I was not going to let this big idea, this massive problem hide away in Australasia. It is like so important that this nuclear problem is solved globally. And it's really important to me that I'm the one that solved it. I want to make sure that we look back in 4 years when 100%, maybe not 4 years, but 100% at some point, every single retailer in the world, whether they're on Shopify or not, will not be manually editing orders because it just does not make sense. And I want to say I started that.
What do Mattel, Victoria Beckham, Sennheiser, and Glossier all have in common? They power their businesses with Shopify. Shopify is the most innovative and scaled commerce platform on the planet. It also happens to have the best converting checkout on the planet. Shopify, powering the future of enterprise commerce. Find out more at shopify.com/enterprise.
Yeah, this is why I wanted to start this episode with the founder story, because I think it's really important for people, because people buy into people, not just software. And I know I really love the e-commerce industry. I've been in it for many, many years. And trust is critical to people buying into software solutions. Yes, the software's got to do what it needs to do, but it's about understanding the people behind it care and have a true understanding of the problem it's solving, and which is what I love about where you've come from. So let's get onto the commercial side now. This is where it starts to get really interesting about what's the impact and how it works. Now, I teased a few things about where people might have issues with orders, but you work across loads of merchants now. What are the most common issues you're seeing? What are the most common needs for people to be able to change orders before they got them down through their warehousing systems?
Yeah, I mean, you can think about it like, let's almost talk about downstream effects, right? At the highest level, the immediate thought is we have a customer service team who spends significant amounts of time doing that. And I can put my hand on my heart and say every single merchant that I've met that does more than 30,000 orders a month has a full-time employee worth doing this 100% of the time. So that's like your very obvious. If you're a big brand, 1.5% of your customers will make a mistake at checkout and they will contact you. And that's manual labor that we're, cutting out, eliminating. If you go below that, you hit this relatively less obvious problem in that, have you ever asked your customer service team what they do when someone asks to cancel or change their order? And you'll find that the bigger the brand, the more likely it is that they have a policy that says you can't make changes to your order because our orders go straight away to NetSuite or SAP or BC or Fulfill.io. And we don't have our agents in Manila logging into NetSuite to make changes to orders in there. And so they just have a no change policy. And that's naturally a really awful customer experience. It's also extremely expensive. Because what do you think a customer service agent does when they reach out and say, hey, can I change my address? And the customer service agent can't. Do you think they just say, sorry, that's going to the wrong house and we'll take your $200? Or do you think that customer service agent is a people pleaser and they want to get a 5-star review and not end up on Trustpilot, and they just end up refunding it or places them a new order? And 9 times out of 10, having worked in a help desk myself and managed a team of 10 agents, we will go for a positive review. We're a big corporation. Do you really think we're not going to refund your order and we're going to keep you $200 because you made a mistake? Like, this is not what happens. And we had a really funny conversation about this the other day, where brands don't want to know what goes on that help desk, that I can guarantee you tens of thousands of dollars are being refunded every single day by support agents, because they're measured and remunerated based on customer satisfaction and not efficacy or efficiency. So if you can't make changes to your order policy, I wish you luck. Really harmful. You can go down from that another layer and you can say, well, if a customer reaches out to cancel their order or change their size and they can't, but it goes to the right address, what do you think happens? It's getting returned, right? And what's the cost of a return for your business? What's the cost of a return for your customer experience and the lifetime value? And we have more than we almost have 200 Shopify Plus merchants on the platform now. And every time I ask them what's happened in the returns department, and the majority tell me that they have a 10 or 15% reduction in return volume. Because at first when I heard that, I thought that was astounding. I had no idea we'd have this benefit. I just didn't know that was going to be a thing. And then we talked about it more with one of our key enterprise merchants. They said, well, it's quite obvious, isn't it? Like, there's no way that not at least 10% of your returns are because the customer couldn't cancel their order in time or because they couldn't change their product. Like, it's got to make up at least 1 in 10 cases. And that's been really exciting. I just did a triple way with my co-founder where we talked a lot about our plans for this year and what we find fulfilling and what we want to achieve. And one of those key messages we had was that we have a genuine conviction that if every brand in the world used this, would reduce global return volume by somewhere between 5 and 10%. And what an amazing impact that would be to reduce global return logistics, because it's awful for the environment and a whole bunch of other things.
Yeah, that's a really nice point, actually, because you often think about the surface impact and not the deeper systemic impact. But I was sat in a client the other day who listened to their customer service team, who the agents remain. I was just blown away by how professional and how courteous and how caring they were to all their customers consistently all day long. But I heard so many times, because their policy is refund the customer and then just worry about the goods afterwards because they're a premium brand. But you realize how much of that could be avoided if the process was tighter. So yeah, it makes a lot of sense. So that's that leads me into a question that I know, and I know the answer to this one, but I think I want everyone hearing to hear it. Is okay, that's great, but we've got a really rapid process where we get out of our warehouses really quickly because we want to hit our SLAs. Systemically, how the hell are we going to do this thing? Because surely Shopify's processed the order, our integration layers picked it up, and it's running every couple of minutes and it's pushed it down to ERP. So systemically, how does order editing work to avoid that issue where the order's already gone?
Yeah, my one piece of advice is do not try and figure it out yourself. Just ask us. If you're a naysayer, if you're a cynic that thinks this is just impossible, just ask us and the answer will become quite obvious. But all of these downstream systems, while you may think they pick up the order on the order create webhook, they do not. And we've built technology to delay it for any period of time that you choose. And that means that the order will just be in Shopify. The changes can happen, let's say it's for 15 minutes, which is what, Represent and Opoly both do. And then it will get sent down to your ERP, WMS, OMS, IMS, regardless of what the system is. It works. The only time we've ever not been able to work with a client was with Sin7, and we just built an integration with them, so it now works. And we've just found another one, which is NetSuite's native integration platform. They're currently working on solving the one issue that's blocking us there. And that's the short and sweet of it, right? If you have one of these more gnarly, complex systems where they don't read changes, they're not Shapiro ShipStation, we built technology to delay the order, regardless of what your tech stack is. Like if Self-Portrait, if Opoly, if Represent, if ThruBark, if all of these clients, citizen seekers can use our platform, so can you. If you're worried about things like oversells, which you should be worried about when you're delaying an order, right? Shopify's often not the master of inventory. You know, we work with these $400 million brands that do flash sales, and we built our own inventory risk assessments where we can understand when SKUs on an order, when any one SKU on an order is running at low inventory levels, we can stop delaying those orders dynamically and send anything with a risk of oversell straight down to your warehouse. We can dynamically disable product label changes because you may want to keep that inventory being reserved and not let them reserve other inventory. You may be worried about your next day shipping cutoff. Hey, we can't delay all of our orders for 15 minutes because if a customer orders at 2:50, we told them that order before 3 p.m. and we'll ship it out next day, and that's going to delay it. Don't change it. 75% of our merchants in the UK have those offers, and we just set it up set between 2:45 and 3 p.m. They can't make changes and we don't delay it. And you just communicate it with a neat little block of content. Our app hides away, and you let them know that they'll have to contact you because they're too close to the deadline. All of these bits of nuance that may feel really complicated have been accounted for, and it's why it still takes 30 minutes to onboard a client, and that's why they still go live within a couple of weeks of meeting us. It's a lot more simple than it seems.
Yeah, I like the having looked at the recent release notes you guys dropped out. I really love that one around the peak, because this, especially in fast fashion where you got drops and you've got massive spikes, that ability to configure it at an individual customer's level to align with cutoff times, or even to pause it completely, or pause it based on specific products is really nice. I mean, that's great granular control. So let's get on to an example. Everyone wants to hear examples. You've mentioned a few.
Yeah.
I'd love to know, because the other part of the product, which is, I guess this to me is the add-on benefit rather than the core benefit, is through the ability to edit orders. It's not just, okay, I need to change my address or I need to remove something. It's ability to add, and ability to then for people to present basket cross and upsells. Can you talk us through a good brand example of somebody who's using your product effectively for standardizing, but also have seen benefits from people adding additional items or swapping items in the basket?
Yeah, I mean, there's all of the ticket solving, and then there's the upsell opportunity where you've just created this new surface for customers to interact with after checkout, and they can keep shopping. I bought a wallet from a client of ours, Exeter, yesterday. They're based in Amsterdam, and 2 minutes after I bought, I had a push notification on my phone telling me that there's still space in my package and I'll get 40% off if I add any add-ons to my order, any accessories. You click on the button, it takes you to our app, and suddenly I'm browsing the storefront catalog, and there is these exclusive offers for me where I can keep shopping at a discount because I'm a converted customer. And it was really compelling. It was very compelling. And the results that they've seen with that, they're not the biggest brand in the world, but they did £30,000 over the month of December. And they solved, 90% of their order editing tickets, which on our numbers, it was, 4,000 or 5,000 support tickets being solved through the platform. If you look at a client that's way up in the ecosphere and in Hexclad, which are a US-based brand, they do $100,000 in new revenue every 60 days. Not even by sending an email or doing a push notification, just by, while customers edit their order, they let them know that there's 20% off if they keep shopping the pots and pans that they offer. And they solve all of their support tickets. They make $50,000 a month. And since they are such a substantial brand, and they do process quite a large amount of order cancellations that we self-service for them, they also save, 5 figures worth of payment processing fees on Shopify by the way that we can refund an order, opposed to the traditional transaction where you get charged 2.9% plus 30 cents per order. One of my other favorite examples is Aviator Nation, who take control, and they leverage the transactional order confirmation email, which gets delivered to everybody and has an extremely high open rate. In certain territories of the world, you can put offers in those emails. In certain territories, you can't. And they dynamically place offers based on the country that they checked out on, saying the same offer again, there's space in your package, get 10% off or 20% off. And, they've been one of our longest standing clients. And in the last 3 months of the year, during Q4, they did $120,000 of revenue. And again, solved all of their support tickets, which for us, we're priced somewhere between the range of $400 to $2,000 a month. For them, it's like 1,000% ROI just on the upsells, like not even accounting for support tickets, which is just stupid.
Yeah, I love that example of the push notification piece, because making this proactive for the customer, not expecting them to react to it, is really, really smart. I've got a tangential question, which is around the tech bit, because you came in, as you said, this is your first business, and you guys bootstrapped it and MVP'd it, and now you're maturing the product and you're putting investment into it. But there's scaling a SaaS product is effortful. Because you've got to go from the point of, okay, it works, the app is working, so make sure you got the right architecture to support like the multi-tenant and ensure that performance in the app doesn't degrade as you add hundreds and then thousands of merchants. How would you handle this? Like, what route have you gone down? Have you gone down just, do you know what, we're doing all of the hosting and management in Shopify, or are you managing it externally? How have you approached it, and what challenges have you guys experienced?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard, and we continue to learn. Have the benefit of a really exceptional co-founder, but we still hit all of these roadblocks. 1 month we have a bill of $2,500 for our server, and the month before that it cost $500 because the cost just got out of control to process the data, and the way that we were processing it and storing it wasn't that efficient. That you get pretty scared when you get a $2,500 bill in the mail and you're a pretty much bootstrap business. So the next month you figure out and you get it down, and it's back down at 500 now because the business is efficient again, despite more and more orders than ever processing through the platform. I think that the hardest thing that we've experienced is just how much nuance comes up, and also just like different Shopify releases and keeping up with them. You work with brands that use Shopify markets, you work with brands that do it in different ways, and you find out all of these interesting edge cases where if you set a fixed price in Shopify markets, for example, and the customer adds a product to the order after purchase, Shopify doesn't give you that part of the API, and they give you the currency converted price rather than the actual flat rated store. And, so we create a ticket with Shopify and we say, hey, this we're the first to do this. So we've discovered this problem. Can you help us fix it? And we have a lot of those conversations because we just keep finding new bits of areas. But one of the examples that I find, I always lean on the most when we talk to merchants about, what have you been through in the past and how have you solved them, is, 6 months into our journey, we started working with an enterprise client, and they pointed out the fact that if we change an address just using Shopify, the taxes don't recalculate. Because Shopify, when you manually edit an order, it won't recalculate the taxes for you. You'd have to do that yourself and send in an invoice technically to the client, to the customer. And so, we scrambled thinking, oh my God, we've got all these proposals out with these 9-figure brands, and they're not going to work with us if we can't support that, because the compliance would be awful. But you figure out a way, you build the product and you solve the ticket and you let the merchant know and they test it and it works, and you go on your way and you just keep squashing bugs as it goes. It's just fascinating understanding how all of these different stores operate. People are replatforming and you find out new things every day, and they throw you in the mixer, and you learn that in reality, no one's got it all figured out. Everyone's finding new stuff every single day, and they solve that ticket and they move on to the next.
Right. I mean, you look at Shopify, well over $1 billion R&D budget, and there are, I'm not meaning this critically. Shopify is a great platform to support some estimation how many merchants, but there are so many flaws and issues when you use it in anger day to day. We go, oh, why does it not do that? Why does it work like that? And that's the reality. You can't make any software perfect. It's a continuous evolution. But yeah, it's nice there. We'll come on to some of those newer features in a bit. But one question I've got is around fraud. And I know this is something you would have thought about, because working with the type of brands you do, especially with big fashion brands, it's inevitable because it's such an area for attracting fraudsters, fashion. But one of the challenges you get, one of the patterns of fraud behavior is place a very small order, check the card goes through and that fraud controls don't trigger and block it, and then hammer that card on that retailer until it gets discovered, and then you're gone. So one potential risk I could imagine finance teams being triggered with hearing about this is, well, hang on a minute, somebody places an order for like a £3 t-shirt, we process it, we tell them they can edit it, they know that the card's been accepted, right, now in their cross and upsells ad, another £500, that's gone through, and now the fraud impact goes up. So how do you work with this? How does that fraud piece work to help, like, I guess, protect people from that exposure?
Yeah. So most of the brands we work with, especially at the larger end of town that have these fraud issues, work with a third-party fraud tool like a Signified or a No Fraud or Account. And those are all technology vendors that we integrate with. And we integrate with a new one every time it comes up. Because, fraud's really important. We do it in one or two ways. Either just check for fraud at the end of the editing period before the transaction goes through. And that means that any changes that happen are then that's the finalized version of the order that they assess. Or for some platforms like Count, we actually just call their API and we trick it dynamically every time the customer saves an edit, and the fraud risk would go up if it did have risk. For brands that use Shopify fraud natively, that's not something that can be re-triggered at the moment. So it's done at checkout, and then post, like during the editing period, there's no way to recall that Shopify fraud score. But typically we find that brands that just use Shopify because they don't have a fraud issue, and they're not too concerned about how customers use the app. It certainly has never come up as like a high priority thing for us to tackle. Things like taxes, you jump on the fraud question. We tell merchants up front, like, look, it doesn't get recalled, but we've never had an issue with it. We had one interesting problem, like it's a big conversation that we have internally, less so about recalling, but more so how can customers abuse our app. And we had one really interesting situation with a British brand where a customer checked out, obviously saw the app, changed their address, and then placed like 30 other orders changing their address. And I think they had the idea that if I change my address and then they ship it to the new one, I could do a chargeback saying like, hey, that's not how I placed it. I imagine that was what was going through their head. Like they could create a ticket saying, I never made that order edit. What are you talking about? And so we built an inbuilt fraud tool across all of our merchants where if any email or address is used and edited multiple times within the hour, we just don't let them change their order. We block it. We say that's a potentially risky customer. And that was just something that came up from a merchant. They were terrified about it. The chargebacks didn't go through because it was just nonsense. But we shipped a solution for it the next day. We said, hey, we built this for you. We'll turn it on. Because screw that guy. We don't want that to happen again.
I love that. I love how reactive you guys are to that, and the ability to control it and ship it that quickly. And I guess actually it's not overly complex bit of code, right? Because you're just checking for a
usage and
then putting a block. but it's so well executed at speed. And I think that's what keeps merchants happy, isn't it? There's a problem and you don't have to wait 4 months for the roadmap to update.
Yeah. And I mean, that's the beauty of working with startups, right? Like early adopters will know this, is that tech moves extremely fast, and we will do anything to make the platform work for you, even if 1,000 people are knocking on our door, because you are our livelihood. And we care about every single one of you, and there's not enough of us to palm you off to other people. Like you work with me and you work with Kara, and we're in your Slack and we reply within 3 hours, which is a blessing and a curse because it's high pressure. It's why we work so many hours and why there are bags under the eyes often. But like it's fun, it's exhilarating. And then the most frustrating part is that you have a situation where maybe there's a third-party tool that's causing an issue with your app, or like it doesn't work out of the box, and then you contact their support team and you wait for 3 weeks for a ticket to get solved, despite them having 100 times more employees than us. And it's like we're just at their arm's length, and they don't realize how important it is for that merchant to use us, for us to work with them. It's just another ticket on a list.
Yeah, and do you know what? I always find that really frustrating, because a £1 million business today could be £100 million business in 2 years, and the benefit to you of a stronger relationship where that client, where that merchant trusts you because you've helped them on a growth journey is massive. Let's talk about some of the latest releases. You've already alluded to a few of them, like that that ability to like pause edits around peak or have specific cutoff times. So there's a couple where it'd be useful also for me and a purely selfish level to understand a bit more about what it is, how it works. You've introduced multi-currency. I'd love to know what currencies are you now supported in your edits?
Oh, it's everything. It's everything. That's really about, there's a belief, and I don't think there are any really other third-party platforms that can support it, where you can't upsell after purchase a multi-currency order. With our app, you can. Like it's completely fine because of where it is in the purchasing journey. All payment methods work. Like I onboarded a merchant in France last night, and I had my French colleague on the call speaking French to them, and we were looking at the app in French, and I was just helping set up Shopify flows for our integrations and things. Like they talked about, different payment gateways. They have all these different things, and yeah, I just nodded my head and said it works, and we did a test order across all of them, and it's beautiful. Euros. I'm not going to rattle off currencies, but they're all friendly. They can all be edited. Multi-currency editing is allowed as a Shopify release maybe 6 months ago, I think. That's been really neat. It's been a nice surprise and delight factor for the app because people don't expect it.
And another one which is definitely a challenger one sometimes is recalculation shipping. Depending on rates, can be really simple. Like it's free delivery over X, or it's say €3.99 under that, or they can be complex based on combination of factors, even down to volumetrics. So how sophisticated at the moment is your shipping recalculation? Does it work with any shipping method rate then in the platform?
Yeah, it's super robust. We sometimes encounter issues briefly when they use a third-party tool to run those rates and they're not loaded into Shopify. Non-technical founder speaking, so forgive me, that wasn't the best way to describe it, but I think people will know what I mean. But speaking about performance and performant, one of the things that merchants will comment about our app in full transparency is that it's not the fastest thing in the world. It's not as fast as their cart upsell or their checkout upsell. And that's for good reason. Adding an upsell in cart or checkout is quite simple. You've got one check to go through and the loading that happens afterwards. We are recreating entire orders in the back end to understand what happens in that moment when you add this product and change that product size and, increase the weight of the package or whatever it might be, so that we can then surface back those rates live to the customer in a self-service experience. So if you have quite complex script discounts running, custom shipping logic, quantity, buy one, get one free, all of these different types of things running on a single order, which does happen, especially during sale periods. Yeah, it'll take 6 or 7 seconds for a customer to do an upsell because we're recalculating the taxes, we're understanding that the shipping method's still valid, and then converting into a new shipping method and surfacing that in UI so they know there's going to be an increased cost and all these types of things. And it's gnarly, but it works, and that's the important part. And it's a hell of a lot quicker than an email, and it's a hell of a lot risky than a customer service agent doing it manually and just adding a product in and clicking save.
Do you know what? I love that transparency because it's really important for people to understand this. Because if it takes that amount, let's face it, trying to get through to a customer service agent, if you're phoning up or you're on a live chat, is going to take way longer. But that ability for people to manage expectations and to have even to have simple holding things saying, please wait while we process it.
Yeah. And we're smart with it. We put in cute loading screens and we give a spinning wheel and it says on that loading screen, recalculating your shipping method.
Yeah.
Understanding the taxes, estimating the taxes on your order, adding the product, wrapping up, all of these cute little messages that someone that left Shopify for 7 years, Paul Goldston, and joined our team had the idea for, because he understands what beautiful products look like because he worked at Shopify for 7 years. And, there's lots of neat ideas for us to take that even deeper to make that, it will probably remain at somewhere between 4 and 6 seconds, load time feel like nothing.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. It's always about managing the customer so they know what's happening. It's the same with any queuing situation. And you see the British, we love to queue. We don't like to play queue, but we hate not knowing what we're queuing for and how long. And as soon as you're in a queue for anything, whether it's a train station, for tickets, anywhere, if you don't know what's happening because of a delay, then the anger and the frustration, when expectations are set, probably find 99% of people will manage it and be happy with it and not give up and think it's not working. Let's go to the next one and switching payment methods. I'm intrigued by this because this can add challenges, especially if you've got cross and upsells. So what do you enable? What do you allow for switching pay methods? And then how does that work with authorization flows? If you've got having to take more or refund?
Yeah. It's one of those brilliant, it's one of those product ideas that happen because we have so much data flowing through, like similar to when we released letting customers apply discount codes retroactively. We did that because half of our cancellation reasons were people forgot their discount code. So let's build it so they don't cancel their order. Switch, like I'd use the wrong payment method makes up maybe 10 or 15% of reasons why customers self-service cancel. So we built the feature, and it works in a really neat way where the customer will go through the checkout process. They authorize the charge on their card, or the Shopify does. And then during the editing period, we just maintain that card authorization. And when they go to switch payment methods, we bring up a QR code on the screen so they can do it with their phone if they want, or they can click a button and continue on their laptop if they're doing it on a laptop. And they go through checkout for the same order again, but they can switch the payment method. We void the authorization on the old one, which is an instantaneous, like no 7-day wait for your refund or whatever it might be. And they check out again. And the UI makes it really clear that, look, like your previous payment has been refunded to you. When you check out, this will replace it. And they get a new order. And then they could edit that order if they wanted, which is usually like the logic that happens.
Oh, okay. I hadn't understood that. So basically it's creating a new order and cancelling the old one.
Bingo.
Understood. Okay, that makes more sense. And then the other one, which I found interesting, is automatically holding orders when a support ticket is raised. Now, my assumption is this means a support ticket is raised on that order, rather than just a general support ticket on their customer account. But can you talk us through that? What is that again? What's that systemic flow? Like someone goes to places an order, there is a support ticket against it. How does that work? Can they do any editing, or there's no editing, or it's just that the edit happens, but then you don't process the order until the ticket's resolved?
Yeah. So, I mean, we have this beautiful technology to hide orders from ERPs or from warehouse management softwares. And again, that can be done dynamically, and it can be enforced across orders when certain traits or characteristics are applied on them. And if a customer creates a support ticket, we can then make sure that that order doesn't get sent until that support ticket is classed as resolved. So if someone does reach out for whatever reason and they really don't want that order to ship, despite the brand's like everything else flowing through instantaneously or every 15 minutes after order creation, that order will stay until that ticket resolves, so that it can just be handled in Shopify, which is a hell of a lot simpler, especially for the support agent who's working on that ticket. The same thing can apply to the orders with incorrect addresses. I wish every customer was so perfect that when we flagged that their address was incorrect, that they changed it themselves. Some people would just close the tab after they pay and they never see that their address isn't validated and it won't ship out until they fix it. We can keep that order on hold so that customer service can proactively reach out, or you can send automated email notifications saying, hey, like, we need you to change your address. You can still do it self-service because we haven't sent it to our warehouse yet, which is a lot easier than an email back and forth.
And does this rely on the merchant having a specific ticketing system, like a Gorgeous or a Zendesk? Does it rely on a third-party system with a ticketing ID?
No, so they on all ticketing providers, because they can create the ticket through our app. So they can write in messages directly from thank you and order status page and from their customer account section, and we can then understand it. The same thing can apply with a Gorgeous. We find that customers are relatively slower to contact a help desk platform than they are when it's this like embedded experience as opposed to writing an email.
Interesting. I didn't know that you had that ability to customer to create a ticket directly from the app. Interesting. That's what I love about
that. That'll get fed to Gorgeous, but they write the content in our app.
I get you. So if they already have a third party system, then you just automatically use the API to flow it into there, so they've got it in one place, and then you get the updates back. If they don't have a system, it's all done within your app.
and go, which is like, there's so many different ways that merchants use that feature. We let customers apply discount codes. Not everyone wants to show that as a front-facing module and alarm customers that they have this opportunity to apply the code that they forgot. But some people want to show it if they're going to create a support ticket because they forgot to apply a code. And so when they select, I forgot my code to either cancel or to create a ticket, then we forcefully let them apply it. Or if they say, my shipping time's too slow, then we load out the upgraded shipping method modules and let them pay for express shipping without having to create that ticket, which is really neat. You can do this dynamic experience based on the actions that customers take.
Amazing. Yeah, that's really nice. And my next question is, I'll imagine people listen who are on the merchant side who aren't using a process like this at the moment will have okay, great, but that sounds like there's so much functionality, which is amazing. But what is your advice to people when introducing order editing? How do they start simple? How do they pilot? Because people will measure the impact before they start enabling lots and lots of really rich functionality and integration. So how do people typically start this journey?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, the product, like, we've built all these things because we have clients with needs and edge cases. The reality is, like, 90% of our merchants use the platform in a very simple way. They treat it as a user interface for customers to make changes that they want to their order. And the most commonly elected features would be address changes, quantity, the ability to add more products, the ability to change size or switch to entirely new products, downloading tax receipts, and then potentially order cancellation and forgotten discount codes. There's other things around that, like gift notes and delivery dates and all these things, but that's not 90% of merchants, right? So they turn on that UI, and then you combine it with a simple grace period, which is what our app handles. And that's really all our app is. UI for changes will handle all the back end of how those things will work, and grace period to let it happen with your ERP or whatever your system might be. And that grace period is templatized. You know, we onboard merchants in 30 minutes. Paul's one of the guys that we recently hired. I onboard someone in 30 minutes because I've done this 1,000 times now. Paul joined, I think, about 2 months ago, and he's now onboarding merchants in 30 minutes because it's just that simple. We have a Google Doc filled with Shopify flow templates where if you tell me, hey, we'd like a 15-minute delay, but we need to make sure that it meets our 2 p.m. cutoff, and it's only for these specific shipping methods. And these, like, not Monday to Friday, it's Monday to Thursday only. Like, I just download that flow and import it onto your store and turn it on, and you're done. So it is really simple, provided that you work with us on it. I think the complexity is when you try and, like, figure these things out yourself and you forget that, like, look, 1,000 people have been, handheld through this thing. And we've probably got your answers hidden in our brains. I wish we had better documentation to overcome, but right now it's in our brains. Full honesty.
I've worked with £100 million plus businesses whose documentation is probably even worse. I don't think I think it's so good. Yeah, I think that the more you, I mean, it's really, I think this is a really important lesson for anyone working in, like, technology startups or anyone where you're doing technology training projects is documentation accuracy and maintaining it when you're in a stressful position. So hard. But you're right. I find this with my documentation. I do a lot of re-platforming projects and tech selection for merchants. So I work with a lot. Obviously, I work with amazing tech companies like yourselves, and I have what I think is good documentation until I realize it's not, and then I go, "Oh God, I should have updated that." There's always a way, but the flow bit, I think that's automation of the flows is really, really smart, because it's amazing how you get these nuances where if you get one of the branches slightly wrong, it doesn't do what you need it to, and then it all falls down.
Yeah, we definitely, like, whenever a merchant meets with us and they onboard with us, they often reach out and they're like, oh, like, I want to add this customization, and should I do it myself? And they know that we're, like, experts at this because we do it so many times, and I'm like, I don't want you to put flows on your store, like, let me do it. Because there are common pitfalls on how you set up conditional blocks and things that just it helps with the scar tissue that we have, because we did have scar tissue too. Like, we've fucked up many flows, especially in the first, like, 5-6 months of this business. And thankfully, stakes progressively get higher, and, we don't do that anymore. And at the same time, the stakes are so high that, you wouldn't want to either.
My final question for you is, you're focused on the Shopify ecosystem, and it makes so much sense because of the nature of app building there. But as you said, your long-term ambition about helping globally would require you to extend past Shopify. And there are other platforms out there. I can see this fitting really nicely in who have like similar rule builder pieces, but also who are all about connectivity with special third parties. Centra I can see be amazing because of like the fashion and lifestyle. Ecommerce because of the App Store and the API piece. When would that be on your roadmap to extend into other ecosystems?
Yeah, we have a few shoulder taps happening at the moment from merchants in the ecosystems or in those like parallel ecosystems. And we'll do it as soon as like there's a compelling business case to do it. But the reality is we're still so early. While this may feel like this high growth, big business working with amazing clients, like it's still so small on the grand scheme of things. Like, you know, we have maybe somewhere between 30 and 40 amazingly like well-recognized brands in the UK, but there's actually like thousands of those, or at least hundreds, you know, so we're just getting started. I'd love to build for Centra. Centra is one that really excites me. Europe's got a really special place in my heart. We do a lot of work in France and Germany and Denmark and Amsterdam, and like the way that the culture works there and the brands that start up there, and even just their tech scene is blossoming. I'd love to get more involved there, but it just needs to make business sense. I'm hoping that, you know, in somewhere probably in 12 months that we'll have another solution out in the market.
Interesting. There we go. There's a nice little tease. I look forward to seeing when you extend out, because I think that's always the challenge, isn't it? Is how you then build that into the next ecosystem. It takes time and effort. But look, Hamish, I really appreciate you joining us. I know it's getting into your evening over in New Zealand. I'm really enjoying the success story. I know it's going to be an amazing year for you guys. And order editing was one of me and Paul talk about tech that we just love, and it's one of the ones last year that it was just instantly that's brilliant. So thanks for coming on. If anyone's now wants to find out more, or they might have more technical questions about, right, how does this really work for these few scenarios? How do they reach out? How can they get like a demo?
Yeah, I mean, fastest way is go to orderediting.com. Yes, we got the .com, and just book a demo through the website. It's straight to my personal calendar. You'll be meeting with me, which is always nice. Otherwise, like if you want to just hang around and tease it out and come, you know, in 3, 4, 5, 6 months, follow me on LinkedIn, just my name. And like we're telling this really exciting story publicly. It's very honest. It's very raw. And yeah, like we're just trying to solve this problem and do it the right way and do it as good people as we go. So would love to have you following our journey.
Excellent. And Hamish's details are on our landing page for this episode as well. And do hit him up on LinkedIn. The journey's fun to follow. Hamish, always a pleasure chatting, mate. I'll leave you to enjoy your evenings.
Thanks, James. Talk soon.